Hello and welcome to the garden. Well, I'm sowing again today and I'm probably just a little bit behind with this, but we're only coming up to mid-March, so it's not a problem. So today I want to kick off some flowers and a bunch of leafy greens to take over when some of the other stuff we're eating at the moment runs to seed. Now, of course, all that stuff that's been happily overwintering, sitting in the greenhouses and the polytunnel, just gently moving along, growing very slowly, that has all changed in the last couple of weeks. The increase in temperature and light levels, they will all be running to seed pretty soon, so I've got to get some replacements started. Now, I don't often feature flowers on my videos, and that's simply because I don't have the same amount of expertise in those as I do in fruit and veg. So I've been growing fruit and veg for a long time, and we grow flowers, and we love flowers, but I just haven't picked up that same level of understanding of them. So I'm not an expert in anything floral. I'm not really an expert in anything ornamental. Mostly it's stuff that I can eat. But anyway, this video I will just start off some marigolds and tagetes. Those are really good plants to put under cover or otherwise use as companion plants. They attract beneficial insects. There's a few things that you don't want in the garden that do not like them, so they are pretty good all round, and I do like to have a few of those. I will also kick off some borage. It's nice to have some borage around. There's quite a lot of borage actually in the local area, but I like to put a little bit in the kitchen garden here. The bees go nuts for it. It is a rather boisterous plant, and of course it does self-seed very often, so it's not always ideal, but if there's a spot where you can fit a couple of borage plants, the bees will thank you for it, and your garden will be chock full of bumblebees and honeybees, which is brilliant. So I will get those going, and then I need to start some lettuce. Now, we've still got plenty of lettuce at the moment. Those in the greenhouse, they look like they are sort of reaching up to start flowering sometime in the not too distant future. We've got some in a cold frame that is a bit behind, so hopefully, if I get the timing right, by the time these are ready for picking the first of the outer leaves, those others should just about be going over. If I get the timing wrong, and I may well have done, these should probably have been started a couple of weeks ago, then they will go over and there will be a gap before we get our next harvest, but never mind, it is what it is. The other thing I want to kick off is some chard and spinach. Now, I'm a little bit late for sowing the spinach. Spinach doesn't like warm conditions. It's probably best sown in the latter half of the year, but you can do an early sowing, and I will put this somewhere shady, somewhere along the north border I expect, and hopefully it won't bolt too quickly, and we'll get a couple of pickings off of it before it does. But then I want some chard. I've got Fordhook here, so that's a big old chard, proper ribs on it. I really like that variety. If you don't like the ribs on the chard, it is not the right variety for you. We love the ribs, so that one suits us very well indeed. And I will also start some spinach beet. Nothing to do with spinach. Also sometimes referred to as sea kale beet or perpetual spinach. It's none of those things. It really is just a leafy sort of chard with very little of the stem to it. So it's a handy plant. It doesn't mind the warmth. It's much more reliable than spinach as you go into the warmer parts of the year. Anyway, time to stop talking and get on with some work. Right, I will reuse these labels. There's no chance that I'm going to confuse tagetes with chilies and aubergines. What have I got? That's chard, you silly boy. Right, I've got some marigolds there, some tagetes, that's the borage. No, that's lettuce. I thought I had another variety. So I'm not particularly fussed about the varieties. I've got this French Marigold Honeycomb. I've got Tagetes Sparky mix and another Marigold Lemon Gem. Well, I'll sow a bit of each of those, and I'm running out of space, and I'm also running out of sensible sized cell trays. Now I will free some of those up soon as I plant stuff out, but for now I'm going to get all three of those in this seed tray. I'll just fill this very loosely to start with. It's my usual blend, sieved compost, and I've got some coir in there, a little bit of vermiculite. Right, that's very light, so I'll just go over that, just tamp that down gently. I don't want to compress this too much, but just a little bit. Even it out a little bit. That will do very nicely, and now I'll give that a drop of water. A lemon thing, a honey thing, and a sparky thing. Now a couple of these are older seed. I will sow those moderately thickly, I think. Oh, that's going to be plenty. I'll leave a nice big gap down the middle so there's no doubt which one is which. I do like these seeds. They are ever so funky. Brilliant stuff. And then this honeycomb. So this is new seed. I won't sow quite as much as that. Right, and now I will just cover that over with a little bit of care to start with, so I don't spread those seed into the neighbouring spaces. Yeah, there we go. This compost is a little bit on the damp side, so I don't have to water the top now. And I'm not going to compact that. That will do nicely. Right, let me get those out of the way. The borage, I'll start in these 7cm pots. I think I'll just kick off half a dozen of those. I don't need too much borage. They are big and vigorous fellas. Half a dozen will be more than enough. I'm sure I could find space for those. Great, just soaked myself. Right, I'll just make a little depression there in the middle. And this isn't fresh seed either, but there's an enormous amount of it, so I'll just sow a little pinch in each one, and hopefully I get something germinate. Germination was good last year, so I expect it'll be fine. And then I'll just top each pot up. Now next on my list, I've got something I've never grown before. That is celtuce. It's something I've been thinking about trying for a while, and I'm going to start those off in a seed tray. I have no idea what they are like in terms of germination, but I mean, they're effectively a lettuce, but one that is grown for the stems rather than the leaves, or at least let's say predominantly for the stems. I've got a mountain of seed here, but I'll just scatter a little bit over the top of this tray, and I will prick these out later. I imagine germination is quite reasonable with this. Again, a light covering of compost on top. Less the lumpy bits, ideally. So the next sowings, I'm going to start off in these cell trays. Now these are fairly large cells. It's not a problem, but I would use something smaller for this job actually, except all of my smaller ones are in use, so maybe I need to get a couple more. But I'll kick them off in these. They can grow on here to reasonable sized plants before I put them out. So what have I got? I've got spinach. I'm growing Viroflay. It's an old favourite. It is a bit of a monster in the spinach department, but a very nice plant. Good old variety, that. Then I've got 4 varieties of lettuce. I've got all sorts of different lettuce seedlings, so I've just pulled 4 out for this sowing, and I can mix them up later in the year. I've got good old 4 seasons, sort of green and red. It's a hearting type, but you can quite easily pull off the outer leaves and just pick it as you need it, and that's exactly how I'm going to be using it. I got some old seed of bloody cos. I do quite like this cos. It is very slow to bolt, so at least in my experience, so this is quite a good one. Sort of classic cos shape, but with flecks of crimson on the leaves. Again, of course it forms a heart, but the cos ones are pretty good. You can just go around, pick off the outer leaves quite happily. And another cos, Lobjoit's green. This one's always reckoned to be the best tasting of the cos. And a classic lettuce, black seeded Simpson. This is another good one for just picking individual leaves. Actually, there aren't that many lettuces where you can't sensibly pick off the individual leaves. Only those that form quite early on a tightly packed heart. But none of these form quite that sort of heart. So I think these are all great for just taking individual leaves. And if you keep picking around the plants, they will crop for longer, and you get better harvests than just taking whole plants out. Anyway, I will put, I think, what am I going to do? I don't want that many plants. I'm going to do maybe 5 each of the lettuce. I'm not even going to bother labelling them. I will be able to tell the difference between all of these varieties. And I'll do some of the spinach. Again, I don't need a huge amount with that. It's not really for small leaves. That's not necessarily a great variety for that. It produces big old leaves. They are quite tasty raw in the salad or whatever, but they're also great cooked. So I will probably use that more as a cooked veg than in the salad. So as usual, I'll start by just filling this loosely. I'll just press that in just a little bit. It's reasonably light compost mix, this. Top it up. Brush the rubbish off the top. And then give it a good watering. You see the compost slump just a little bit. That's because it is quite a light mix. So I'm really not compressing it too much when I press it down. So as usual, I'll just make a few dimples here. Right. I think I'll sow 5 of each variety of lettuce across the tray that way, and 2 columns of the Viroflay. That should do nicely. So this is older seed, so I will sow a few in each cell and then pinch them out to just 1 plant. Okay, that was far too much, but never mind. Germination should be good for these at this time of year. What lettuce really don't like is high temperatures. They will not be happy to germinate during the height of summer. I will not put these anywhere warm. They don't need it and they don't like it. They can just sit on the bench here or maybe in the polytunnel. So now, quattro stagioni, 4 seasons. Again, it's not fresh seed, so I'll make sure there's a few in each cell. This is fresh seed, so that doesn't need quite so many. This is Lobjoit's green. And finally, in this, for the lettuce, black-seeded Simpson. This is an old classic. Sort of a loose leaf head on it. Ridiculous number of seeds here to be sown in the next couple of years. 6,000 seed. I really don't need that many. And then finally the spinach. I didn't grow any spinach last year, largely because we really enjoy the Chard, so we don't always have to have the spinach. But I thought I would bring it back this year. And that is a really fantastic variety. Right, so I just top that up with some care. brush the junk off the top. Right, lovely. So I'm afraid I have had some sort of technical glitch here. This section of the video has no sound whatsoever. So it's time for a little bit of a voiceover. So I'm just mixing up a new batch of sowing mix. I've got the sieved multi-purpose, just chucking in some coir, and now a little bit of vermiculite, not too much. And I'll give it a good mix up. Don't have to be too fussy, just reasonably well distribute those components. You could sow into either the coir or the compost, but somehow I feel that the combination is pretty handy. You do not need to see me filling up yet another compost tray, and there it is. So I'm sowing away again. At this end I've got the spinach beet. I'm putting 2 or 3 seeds in each cell, and I will probably allow those to grow in a little cluster. If need be, I will thin them. I don't want the clumps to be too big, but yeah, the chards and the spinach beet, they grow happily in clumps. I'm sowing a couple of seed in each cell for the chard as well. So these can either be planted out as single plants. They are quite big, this variety in particular, or you can have a cluster of maybe 2 or 3 plants. I often plant them out in little groups of 3. They seem to grow quite well that way. And yeah, I will probably thin these a little bit to make sure I don't have too many plants in each cluster, and as usual just covering the tray with some more compost, and this job is done. So the final thing I'm having a go at here is some dill. Now dill does have a habit of running to seed pretty quickly, so I'm not going to sow too many pots in one go. I will follow this up with another sowing in some weeks' time. So I'm going to do half a dozen pots. That's plenty to do one nice row of dill across one of the veg beds, and that will work out great. And yeah, I will hopefully have a bit of succession going. Sowings made in the latter half of the year last much longer than those made in the spring. So my dill seed is old, but I've got tons of it, and I will sow it fairly thickly in these pots, and hopefully I'll get a reasonable number of plants. Again, it's something that you can space individual plants out, or you can let it grow in little clusters, and I'll be happy to let it grow in small groups. If I get really good germination from those seeds there, I will thin them out a little bit, as I have put a fair bit of seed in there. I've got tons of seed and it doesn't last forever, so I don't mind dropping a reasonable amount in each pot, just topping them up, and my job is done. I'm really sorry about the sound on this video. I don't know what keeps happening with the camera. Every now and then it just shuts off the external mic, and I either get no sound at all or I just get rubbish sound. Very frustrating. It is going to get a very stern talking to. Now, anyway, I'm really glad to get this sowing done. Hopefully the sort of leafy greens that we do have will keep going for a little bit longer until these are ready to start cropping. We've got a ton of chard in the garden, and that will give us more harvests now. Those plants, I think they were sown probably late summer, I can't quite remember, but those have cropped all the way through autumn and into winter. Now, during the worst parts of winter, so the last couple of months really, those plants have become quite ragged indeed. However, there is new growth coming up from the centre. all I need to do is go around those and pull off the rubbish old leaves from outside. The ribs are all manky and unpleasant. I'll strip all of that old growth away and the new growth will come through. Of course, that's just a prelude to running to seed, and it will want to do that. In the not too distant future, I will try and postpone that. I will pull off the flower spikes and keep cutting the plants back, and they will keep cropping for quite a while. It's a losing battle. The plants eventually get quite ragged, but we should get a good crop off of them before they do, and by the time they go ragged, I should have these Fordhook giant chards on the way. So yeah, hopefully that succession works out, and this year I am hoping to plant a better succession of things like the lettuce and now the spinach. The spinach is not a crop that likes to hang around as the temperature warms up either, so it's definitely something where I need a succession, take the harvest while they're still young and good, and then it's not a problem if they try to run to seed a little bit more quickly than one would like. Anyway, that is all for this video. Thanks ever so much for watching, and bye for now.